Could there be a world where XRP is treated differently than any other crypto asset by banks worldwide? Now, in my last video, I talked about how the set price for XRP could have potentially been reduced by the Bank of International Settlements' new regulation that they were trying to kind of suggest to all financial institutions and banks, that banks will only be able to hold 1% of their core capital in a Category 2 digital asset. And XRP right now is categorized as a Category 2 digital asset, meaning that the whole idea of a ceiling and a floor price for XRP not only becomes more feasible, but actually was lower than we probably would have hoped, or potentially limiting. Now, I've had an email from a subscriber for such a long time. I remember talking to him even on Zoom to talk about one of his kind of theories before, based on something I've said. And his name was Arild, and he's in Norway. And I want to kind of formulate his kind of view on this, because essentially the top line of his message to me was, you're looking at it the wrong way. And he's going to challenge my view to give his perspective on how XRP, in fact, doesn't need to be limited by this 1% rule. And I'm going to get into his whole theory right here in this video. If you enjoy it, please make sure you hit subscribe, and thank Arild in the comments for bringing this together, because it really is quite interesting. So let's get into it. And so what this argument really does is it doesn't limit itself by the potential limitations due to the regulations that I was talked about in the last video. It's a new perspective, potentially even an older perspective that I have had, and it offers a broader view on XRP's potential in the role of actually global finance. So as I said before, the Basel framework made by the Bank of International Settlements, they created this 1% exposure cap. Basically, for Group 2 assets like XRP, you'd essentially have any bank's core capital, means all the money that they have kind of in reserve, no more than 1% of that could be allocated to a Group 2 asset. Now, a Group 2 asset is an unbacked asset, and that is essentially XRP. And so the idea is that limitation would also limit the price of XRP, because you couldn't get the likes of JP Morgan, all these massive entities buying vast amounts of XRP because of that 1% exposure cap. Now, as you know, or if you don't, I'm about to explain it, XRP is a bridge asset, meaning that you can convert essentially any asset, any, like, let's say pounds, British pounds, into dollars, and you use XRP in the middle to kind of switch those. So right now it kind of acts as an intermediary between these essentially currency swaps, although it won't necessarily be limited to currency down the line as it rolls out even more. And this makes the process of transferring from one asset into another extremely efficient and fast, not to mention a lot cheaper. Now, it has been noted that in order for XRP to be able to serve as an effective bridge asset, to be a bridge asset effectively, certainly in cross-border payments, which is the clearly the worst part of finance right now, because cross-border payments are just horrible, each token must be valued high enough to operate at that level in a way that is most efficient and most cost-effective. It has to be able to handle large transaction volumes as well, and lots of large transaction volumes and lots of money. It needs to be able to handle all this money. And a higher valuation of an XRP allows that to become even easier as that continues. And so whenever anyone wants to do anything financial, any financial activity, you want to use an asset that can do it. And XRP fits that bill. Look, everything's up in the air. We don't know what's coming, but this is a fantastic way of looking at it. And certainly I think aligns with the more positive outlook of things. Currently, as it stands right now, the banking system works in this way. Certainly when you're talking about other currencies, you'll have big banks, and they hold multiple different currencies so that they can transact in those international currencies. So for example, if I'm a bank and I want to transact with China, I need to hold yuan. I need to hold their currency in order to be able to do those transactions. So you might have the Bank of England, and they will hold the Norwegian krone, or the Danish krone, or the euro, or the dollar, or the yuan, or the rubles. Like, they'll hold all of these currencies in one single bank. Now, the problem is that when you're holding lots of different currencies in massive volumes, that's quite costly. And it's also not that liquid, because now you need to find ways to send that money. And there's increased operational complexity and it just costs a lot more to hold all of these different assets. Now, this is where XRP comes in, because XRP being a bridge asset doesn't necessarily need to be a bridge asset. It could actually be the initial asset. So let's look into that a little bit more. If banks were holding XRP, it would remove the need for banks to hold lots of different currencies. So instead of holding 1% in each of the kind of 25 to 30 different currencies, banks could consolidate all of those holdings and just hold XRP. XRP essentially simplifies that whole system by, instead of having 30 different currencies, you just have one, and you can use it to basically, it's like one gives you access to them all. Instead of having 30 that gives you access to 30, you have one that gets you access to more. It's like a no-brainer. And of course, that frees up resources that banks have for other uses. It means they have greater liquidity, meaning they can actually exchange the value that they have in XRP into anything, essentially. And it also simplifies the whole process. It makes it so much easier. However, in its current standing, the current positioning of XRP, certainly as a digital asset, a category 2 digital asset, no less, it's kind of limited to this 1% thing. And so if this 1% thing is in fact pushed out, these are recommendations essentially from the Bank of International Settlements to all the banks. Typically, banks just follow what they say because they are the regulation advisors. But essentially, what needs to happen for that 1% cap to not apply to XRP is for the current regulations to change. There needs to be a new way that the Basel framework kind of integrates XRP into these regulations. Because after all, that concept, the 1% exposure limit concept, is a way for the Bank of International Settlements and banks to reduce the volatility. It's a volatile asset, XRP is. And so what you need is, you need a high-priced XRP for it to be less volatile, because then it's just functioning and working almost as a software at that point. But the regulations would have to change. And I think this is natural as we progress through these things. Yes, that 1% rule is probably coming into play for the majority of banks. But as time develops and these banks learn more about what actually, you can't just say, Dogecoin and XRP are the same in the same category of cryptocurrencies. Absolutely not. One actually has utility. The other one is just for fun. How can you categorize Dogecoin and XRP into category 2 into the same category? It's not the same. So naturally, as these things mature, you have to divide up the individual merits of each cryptocurrency so that you can treat them individually for their use case. It's like saying, the wheel of a car and a leaf are the same thing because they're both things, okay? But that doesn't account for all the benefits that a leaf brings and how leaves should be treated differently than tires in regulation and in their use case. Like, they're all very different. These things are very different, but as it stands right now, that's what crypto regulations are like. It's just treating a tire like a leaf, or treating a car like this mic. They're categorizing them in the same things because you can buy a car and you can buy a mic. Therefore, they're both things that you can buy. No, that's not sufficient. So you have to have changes in the complexity that people are looking at digital currencies or digital assets. And we have to acknowledge at some point, and I really truly believe and hope that this will happen, they will realize that XRP's utility cannot simply be bundled in with the likes of Dogecoin, even Bitcoin. It cannot be bundled in because it does its own thing. It does a different thing, and it needs to be treated appropriately. And if you're treating XRP appropriately to what it does, you must remove it from this category 2 designation, maybe even call it a category 3, an asset with utility, something like that. Either you change the category 2, you change it from category 2 to another category, or you remove this 1% cap on utility assets. Or maybe you remove the 1% cap on assets that free up liquidity, like get more specific. And so with that change of regulation, what you end up having is a series of banks, central banks, financial institutions that instead of holding various currencies, just hold one because of its utility. After all, we hold currency for their utility because you can transact with it. Well, if there's an asset that you can hold all of the currencies in one asset, why wouldn't you do that? And if people are wanting to do that, if it is a complete no-brainer, then the regulations must change. And I would even go as far as to say, and Arild said this in the email, we need to get to the point where banks are required to hold large allocations of XRP because of its critical role in global finance, not because it's some digital asset or some category 2 thing. No, it has more value than that because it has more utility than that, and it needs to be treated as such because of its importance, the importance of its role. This is global finance we're talking about. Surely XRP would be treated differently because it is different. So it's my anticipation, my hope, that as time goes on, we have increased demand for XRP driven by its role as a bridge asset, and that will drive the price higher because people will be using it and holding it because they see where this is going, you know. And so as XRP's importance grows, the regulations will have to adapt to allow greater institutional holding. And so what this means is, where I was looking at the 1% cap as a be-all end-all in my last video, like that is it. How Arild has posted this to me, or posed this to me, has been more of like okay, maybe 1% is how it starts, but then they start to define things even further and get to a point where they're now treating XRP differently, and there's really no limit on how much XRP they can hold, because they will ultimately, if this kind of idea, thought process is right, they'll want to hold as much as they possibly can. Now, you've also got all of these NDA locked, escrow accounts where this XRP has been allocated already to entities. We don't know who those entities are or when that's going to kind of come out. So when we're going to know about all of that stuff. But we've also got that side of things. Many of those NDA escrow accounts essentially will be significantly higher than that 1% holding. So do they know where this is going? Are they waiting for those escrows to be essentially released when regulation allows it to be? These are all things we need to be talking about. But certainly when you look at a set price for XRP, with this train of thought and the developing of regulation to treat the treatment of XRP being different to other assets, naturally so, appropriately so, that the set price for XRP is actually infinite. When we look at, I say infinite because I stumbled on my words there, but there will obviously be a limit to how high the price can go. But certainly it looks like the reduction of the ceiling price, the set price for XRP with the 1% limitation, if that 1% limitation were removed, we're back. We're golden again. We're golden to see this asset go to ridiculous prices. But the key thing in between is that we have to be allowing time for regulation to adapt and be more specific to cater for the unique properties of these different digital assets. How long will that take? Who knows? And in light of not knowing really where this is going or how it's going to get there, but we know the destination, I think it's really important to have a good, keen awareness of time, understanding that really there's no amount of money that you would take to not wake up tomorrow. And so acknowledging that there is, for every single person, there is a personalized ratio as to how much you're going to hold on to for the long term and how much you can take profit on. The reason I talk about taking profits so much is because we have finite life, and money is infinite, but time is finite. And so if we exist in that awareness, even if you're taking very small percentages off the table, it's really important to start writing down a plan, getting a plan of action in place to take profits in the market, while also have a reserve of assets, XRP, that you hold for the future to allow these, as regulation adapts and, we see adoption worldwide, that you're taking full advantage of that, but you've also taken some profits in the meantime, and you've had a good life while you wait. We don't want to wait and sacrifice for years and years and years for something that we don't know with certainty where the price is going to be or how long it's going to take. So you got to take profits. Is so much more to it than that, as I've kind of discovered in my block flow program. We take people on the journey of complete self-transcendence, acknowledging who you are, being responsible for who you are, good and bad, where you want to be, and then plotting that journey to reach who you want to be, so that you can be the type of person that is able to take the benefit financially from this market and actually do something with it, rather than the sudden wealth syndrome that we see many millionaires have. They get all the money and then they lose it all because they weren't ready as a person. So this program really is getting people ready as people for the income, for the wealth generation that they're going to create down the line. And it's interesting because much of the value that students are taking from the program is about this self-transcendence element of the course, rather than the exit strategy. And so I really think if you're someone who is aware that you're an insufficient vehicle for where you want to be, and you've got a portfolio where you can really make some damage this time around, potentially even get everything done and dusted this time around, I would urge you to book a call with me or my team. You might not get me, you might get me, but we've got a great team here working on these calls, really just to make sure that if you're the right fit for this program, then this is a no-brainer. And really that call is just to discover that. So click the link in the description, book a time to do the call, fill out the questionnaire, the form, the kind of interview form, and we'll see you on a call. Anyway, thank you, Arild, for sending through this theory. I do like it. It's on the positive side. It's an optimistic outlook, I'll say. Anyway, thank you very much. I'll see you all in the next one.